I'm going to Disney World! Okay, we've all seen the ad spots after the Super Bowl or the World Series or the World Cup featuring the MVPs announcing their intentions to immediately go to Disney World or Disneyland, depending on where you are in the country. The What's Next advertising campaign or marketing campaign from Disney has been going on for more than 30 years, and that's because it works. Let's talk about this campaign and the 3 big lessons that we can learn from it. Hi, welcome to Marketing the Magic Live. I am John Delancey, your host and the creator of Marketing the Magic and this little community. And this is our weekly show in which we discuss a marketing lesson inspired by the Walt Disney theme parks, movies, marketing, and more. I am very excited to get into today's talk, and we'll do that in just a second, but I do want to point out that we have, as of this week, tweaked the format of the show. We, instead of having a pre-recorded video on Monday exploring the lesson for the week, and then a live stream on Wednesday exploring the same lesson for the week, we are just going to have the one big 20 or 30 minute stream on Wednesday in which we discuss the lesson, and then that replay will be embedded in the blog post and published on the website soon after that. And on Mondays, we are now going to have what's known as the Magical Marketing Minute. And these are going to be each week a minute or so in which I try to convey some tips or advice or tricks you can employ to improve your marketing in a very short period of time. So let's get into today's discussion. The What's Next campaign is probably one of the most recognizable campaigns. I'm sure we have all seen these ad spots at one time or another, depending on what sporting events you might like to watch, or just because you're a Disney fan and happen to catch it. And like I said, they've been going on for more than 30 years. Let's talk about where it came from. So this campaign started on the night that the original Star Tours attraction opened. And Michael Eisner and his wife Jane were dining with Gina Yeager and Dick Rutan, who had just a couple of weeks before completed the first round-the-world flight non-stop and without refueling. So, over the course of dinner, Ms. Eisner, Jane asked, well, what's next? And Gina Yeager said, well, we're going to Disneyland. And history was made. Jane suggested to Michael that that would make a pretty good advertising campaign, and Michael thought about it, and he agreed. And so he got the teams together at Disney, and they started working on plans, and just a couple of weeks later, the first What's Next campaign went live on television following the 1987 Super Bowl. And the campaign absolutely exploded after that. It was extremely popular. Now, let's talk about a few of the issues that they had to deal with to get this thing done at the time, because remember, this was well before the era of Snapchat and being able to publish a video live for the world to see in 10 seconds from when you press record. Instead, at that very first ad spot that they filmed, they actually had to go around and gather up all of their film, actual film, not videotapes, but film, including the 16mm film that the NFL shot on to get clips from the big game to be able to splice together a nice story. They had to ship all of that film to New Jersey for processing, and then it would be shipped back to them for editing and final production so it could be sent out to the television stations. That took a lot longer than Disney wanted things to take to be able to get these campaigns on air. So, one of the first things they did was figure out how to do all of their filming on video instead of actual film, and they would set up editing suites in each of the, in whatever city the event was taking place in for that particular big game or tournament or whatever it might have been. So they could edit very quickly after the game ended, and then via satellite uplink they could upload the final footage to for access by television stations all over the country. So the time got shorter and shorter between the end of the game and filming or videotaping the MVP of the game with, making the big statement, I'm going to Disneyland and I'm going to Disney World, and then getting it to the television stations for air. And by the way, to this day, most of the players actually do go to Disneyland or Disney World, and it's on Disney's dime, because of course they get even more PR opportunity once they do go. And one of the fastest times Disney ever got was 10 minutes from the end of the game to the ad going live on air. Now that's impressive, and that's whether or not they had access to modern technology and the internet and filming and editing techniques. And this was well before the modern era there. Now, granted, they were working with ABC at the time. Disney had acquired ABC, and ABC was in charge of filming this particular sporting event. I can't remember which game or event it was. So they had the inside track, but they had been pre-compiling footage throughout the game and getting ready and setting everything to When You Wish Upon a Star, the music they always use for those spots. And then so at the very end of the game, as soon as the winners, who had been pretty clear favorites going in, as soon as the winners were determined, they rushed out to the field, got the last few seconds of footage, spliced it together, and again, within 10 minutes, they had this ad prepped, ready, published, and on air. Again, that's pretty impressive. So let's talk about the lessons that we can learn from this campaign, from this What's Next campaign that's been going on for more than 30 years. The very first one has to do with storytelling and marketing. Now, this is something I talk about a lot. It is a major focus for me as a marketing professional. I always try to incorporate story and storytelling technique in the marketing strategies that I develop and the marketing that I put out there. And I'm going to talk about this a lot more because I think it's very important in the modern era. Modern consumers, as I've said in the introductions to this whole project, are too easily fooled by fake marketing. They're too quick to go to our competitors if we don't win them over. And the way that we can win them over is by telling stories in our marketing, connecting with our ideal customers through storytelling. And that's one of the lessons that we can take from this What's Next campaign. We can incorporate story even into very short marketing creatives, so very short videos or a very short blog post or even a tweet. Disney was able to do this successfully, has been able to do this successfully for more than 30 years. Keep that in mind. These ad spots are not very long, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, set to, again, When You Wish Upon a Star, and they're able to cram in the highs and the lows of this game, and for this particular player, this MVP of the game, they're able to cram that whole story into one very short ad spot. It's not just, camera turns on, the guy says, I'm going to Disney World, camera turns off. There is a whole story included in each and every one of these campaigns, or these ads that Disney has produced. And so we can look to Disney for inspiration here. We can incorporate story regardless of the kind of marketing that we're doing. It may be bits and pieces of stories broken up over different campaigns or different creatives or different campaign segments, but we can do it. Now, the second lesson that I think is very important to learn from this campaign is to be ready when inspiration strikes. Now, this is not an incredibly practical lesson, although it can be. Remember, this whole campaign started from an idle conversation over dinner. Jane Eisner asked Gina Yeager and Dick Rutan, what's next? What's next for you guys? What are you going to do now that you've completed the first round-the-world flight nonstop and without refueling? And Gina Yeager said, well, we're going to Disneyland. That's how that whole thing started. Within 2 weeks, within a couple of weeks, Michael Eisner had been won over the teams at Disney and in promotions and marketing. They had the plan put together, and they had this first ad on the air before the era of the internet and modern computers and modern video and all those things. So we have to be ready when the inspiration strikes. Oftentimes, when the inspiration strikes, it'll be a fleeting moment. It'll be a chance to capture something, an idea or something that's going on in the world, or something we can time with something in our local communities or in the world news. So we have to be ready to seize those opportunities. And the way the only way that that's going to work, the only way it works for Disney, is if our teams are trained and ready. They know their jobs, they know their tasks, they know the brand and the story that the brand is trying to tell. They understand who the brand's customers are. So that's what we have to do with our teams in order to be able to seize these opportunities. And the third big lesson that we can definitely learn from the What's Next campaign is that marketing campaigns can live a lot longer than we might think. So the narrative around marketing today is you always have to be testing new ideas and new techniques and new ads and new creatives and new everything, new platforms. And that's true to an extent. But hello, Kevin. Just as Disney has shown with this campaign, which has largely gone unchanged over the last 30 years, campaigns, once we find the formula that works, we can continue to maximize on that campaign. Now, the reason that it's worked for Disney over the last 30 years is that it's not the same every time, but it is the same every time. So obviously, in Disney's case, every single time they film one of these, it's with a different player at a different game and a different sport. So it's not the same every time, but the formula is exactly the same every time. They set it to When You Wish Upon a Star. They show the ups and the downs of the game. They end with the MVP of the game saying, "I'm going to Disney World." That's the formula. And that formula works. They've honed that. They've developed that narrative. They've developed that story so well that they can execute on it every time. So it follows the same formula while being different. Now, in digital marketing, this is where that advice to constantly tweak comes in. Okay, so yes, we do have to test new ad imagery, new headlines, new copy, new landing pages, new forms, all of those things that we have to test in advertising or even in content marketing with blog posts and the kinds of blog posts that we write, the kinds of videos that we create, and so on. We do have to test those things. But once we find the formula that works, and to a large extent, even once we find a campaign that works, we can keep using that over and over again. So eventually, yes, your campaign is going to stop being as effective today as it was yesterday. So we might pause that campaign, we might shelve it for a while, but very often what we can do is then come back to that campaign and turn it on exactly like it was once the audience has gotten used to not seeing it, and it will be effective again. Or we can use the same formula and the same structure and change the ad imagery or change the landing page up, but keep the formula, the structure of the campaign the same. And maybe try a different audience. Try a different audience segment. Try a different one of our ideal customers for that campaign and keep using it. So that's the lesson, the big lesson, the biggest lesson I think we can take from the What's Next campaign from Disney is that campaigns can last a lot longer than we think they can sometimes. And that's really good news because we have to invest a lot of time and energy and money and creativity into developing these campaigns. So it's nice to know that all of that effort doesn't go to waste when that campaign starts to tail off and we have to pause it for a little bit. Now, that's going to wrap things up for today. This was actually a fairly short episode, and that's fine. I'm not going to keep you longer than I need to just for the sake of a runtime. But I want to know what your favorite marketing campaigns are from Disney, or in general. It doesn't have to be from Disney. What are the lessons that you think you can take from the What's Next campaign? And I do hope very much that you will come back next week. So I hope you'll catch it live or at least catch the replays or listen to it on the podcast. We're going to have a lot of fun. The lesson for next week is going to be extremely practical. We're going to focus on message match in digital marketing as inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean, including the movies and the rides. So I'm really, really excited about this. We're going to really dive in. We're going to look at a real ad campaign and what's good or bad about it and tweak it. So you'll get to see how that process works and why it's so important. So I hope you'll join us again next week. In the meantime, guys, have a great day. Go out and make the life that you want to live, and we'll see you real soon. Thanks.